Welcome to the Chronic Spoonful podcast, where we discuss real life with real chronic illness. Each week, we'll cover an aspect of real life spoony living and what that can mean for different chronic illnesses. We hope this will be a place you can go for updated spoony info and where you'll find humor, because, we're a little crazy, important information, and community. As a disclaimer, we just want to remind you that yes, we'll be talking about chronic illness and health information, but we are not your doctor. Everyone's chronic illness is different, and we are absolutely not MDs, so we are not qualified to give you medical advice. We're going to tell you unequivocally to discuss anything we talk about on this podcast with your doctor.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Chronic Spoonful podcast, where we talk about real life with real chronic illnesses. And today we are excited to welcome our guest, Nikki. She has hypermobility Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. She's kind of like my twin, whatever. And we're going to talk a little bit with her today about how she was diagnosed and her experiences since her diagnosis, since it's probably a question a lot of you have been asking. Actually, I know it's a question a lot of you have been asking lately. So we're just going to kind of get into it. Welcome, Nikki.
Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to talk with y'all.
Oh, we're excited to have you. So
Definitely.
Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, how you were diagnosed with EDS and.
Yeah, I think, there's so many things that you can pick up on looking backwards, at the time. I was always a kid they always said I had 2 left feet, that I should be wrapped up in bubble wrap because of constant accident prone. And that's, sort of some of the subluxations and the dislocations and injuries and, just throughout my childhood and just the widespread pain, the muscles, everything, but I am you can't tell because it's a podcast, but I am short. I am 5 feet tall, just about. It's a little under, but I say 5 feet. And I'm a bigger girl. I'm about 200 pounds. And I don't have any shame about that. Some of it's the medication I'm on. Some of it's, I like pizza, whatever.
We all.
But as a bigger person, I think a lot of times people will say it's your weight. You need to lose weight and you'll
Agreed.
feel better.
They always say that to me too.
Yeah. So that's, I remember going to so many doctors, and I also just don't have a very good immune system. I would have ear infections and strep throat. And, it was weird to me, the other kids who were like, oh, I only go to the doctor like maybe once a year. And I'm like, oh, I'm on a first name basis with my dude. Like,
yes,
just between all the injuries and the susceptibility and, all sorts of stuff that was happening, along with like crazy flexibility without working towards it. I don't have an athletic piece of me. I have no sports gym, terrible, I last one in and for the mile kind of thing. I'm
raising my hand really high.
Yeah. But I had in my elementary school, I had the record for the sit and reach test, where you kind of go because my spine is super hypermobile. I can go so far. So it was this weird thing of like flexibility, or I remember when I was little, being able to do splits and, touching my feet to my head and it like not even trying, whereas there were other girls who were like in gymnastics or different things. They're like, how can you just do that? I'm like, how come you can't?
Because we didn't understand back then.
Yeah. So I had no idea, but the pain sort of got worse and worse. And then I would say it really started to hit about 2010. I had a series of injuries where just one injury on top of another, things just stepping off a bus. I had a terrible high ankle sprain that did not heal correctly. So now I have nerve damage in that ankle. And then a couple months later, I damaged the other one getting off a bus. It was actually a worse injury, but it was treated better. But, just the things like my healing was just not very good and just continued issues. And just being told, by doctors, there's nothing more we can do for you.
Yes.
We've given you the treatment. You've had physical therapy 1,000 times. You're on this medication, you're on that. There's nothing more we can do. What do you want from us?
It's the gaslighting that always gets to me. It's the, we don't actually want to look beyond the sprain itself or your weight itself. Or maybe it's just your anxiety, or maybe it's just maybe you just have an infection, maybe, and no one wants to dive in deep or put all the pieces together.
Right. And I think with the hypermobility, it wasn't until after the ankle injury where I still have crazy flexibility in my ankles, but it was reduced and I had noticed it. And then the PT was like, oh yeah, you do, your ankles are kind of, on the extreme end. Huh, that's funny. But they never said the word hypermobility. They never said that could cause pain. They could never, nobody ever assessed it at all.
Oh, wow.
Also though, sometimes when you're hypermobile and you get an injury and then you end up stiff,
yes,
you notice that it's stiff and it's not moving like it was, but then you'll talk to a doctor and they're like, no, you have perfectly normal mobility. And it's like, okay, but you understand that I didn't have normal mobility before. So this means it's stiff.
So I think I just had a series of things. Next was I had de Quervain's tendonitis in my hand. It's the tendon that connects the thumb to the wrist. Insane pain, and they make you go through all the steps: physical therapy, splinting, steroid injections, ice, blah 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 blah. I mean, I had to go through. They're like, oh yeah, you won't need surgery. Most, it's so rare someone will need surgery. Well, guess who needed surgery?
You needed surgery.
And then doing tons of rehab afterwards. And it was my dominant hand. I only have about 80% strength. I don't have a really bad grip strength. Writing is super hard by hand. I can barely, my penmanship is kind of gross. But, so it was like the ankle injuries that didn't heal. And then I'm walking funny. So it was throwing my hips out. And then the de Quervain's tendonitis and having to go through the surgery and, not being able to use my dominant hand for months.
Wow.
Funny story. I don't know as much of your audience will appreciate, but it was a big triumph when I could clasp my own bra behind my back.
I bet.
I was like, holy crap, I could do it finally.
When I recently passed out and sprained my wrist and I couldn't do it, when you finally can do that again, oh my gosh, it's like the heavens opened up.
Was amazing. I mean, now I'm lazy and don't feel like reaching back there. So I get ones that don't have clasp. I just put it on sports bra. I'm like, that's it. I'm done.
So much easier.
With chronic illness relate to just getting a sports bra.
So much easier.
Any kind of shortcuts you can make,
Yeah. Well, also it's not as irritating to the skin or the shoulders where it pulls.
They don't dig in as much.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not that bad. So
I see a lot of specialized undergarment companies now that are making more inclusive undergarments for both on underpants and bras and whatever, just to help support people in different situations. So it's starting to get noticed that maybe always clasping in the back or being able to bend down and pull up your underwear isn't for everybody.
Exactly. And that's okay. And I know sometimes the not yet disabled, as I call them, they sometimes you see people make fun of different products that are made to accommodate and to help people. And that's, oh gosh, I'm like, you're lucky you don't need that.
Yeah.
It's there for a reason. And just because you might not understand it, it's anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree.
There are different things I still use because I don't have very good dexterity in my hands, because the fingers have dislocated so many times and things that it's not good. So
I see people buying the stuff for those things, like the rings you can get, the finger stabilizers, and they think, oh my gosh, it's such a cool ring. And I'm like, what that's really for, right? It's, and they're like, no. And I'm like, oh, well, it's for people whose fingers dislocate all the time and it helps them hold their joints in place.
Wow.
Yeah.
They're making them so beautiful that you can't really tell they're not jewelry anymore. So that's a good thing.
It's something I'm looking into. It's hard because I have carpal tunnel both sides, and I've had the surgery, but the surgery didn't resolve it all the way. It helped a little bit. But I still have it in my right. But then I also have the de Quervain's tendonitis that I'm trying not to have surgery. So the brace for the carpal tunnel aggravates the thumb. So I can't wear, it's like there's not enough to address all of the issues.
Because everybody's body, especially with things like EDS and actually with lupus too, everybody's body reacts to the illness in a little bit of a different way. And so when you sometimes have those things where the symptoms aggravate each other when you try to correct them. And, like for me with the POTS, I have really low blood pressure, but the medicines to treat, a lot of the medicines to treat the POTS lower your blood pressure. So I'm like, I can't take those. So then I take salt pills, which brings up a whole other slew of things.
It's hard.
It really is.
You're constantly looking at.
I also, I have iron overload.
Oh,
Essentially, my body doesn't process iron.
Oh, wow.
And it actually like stores in my organs. So we found it through just routine blood work where my ferritin level was super high. But what had actually happened was I was anemic. So they prescribed you iron pills, but then my body can't process iron. So it caused the iron overload, and the treatment for iron overload is bloodletting. Wow. And the complication from bloodletting
is anemia.
Yes.
So I'm in this constant trying to balance of not having too much of the iron, but then not getting into the anemia territory. So it's like, it's a constant back and forth.
That's got to be rough.
Crazy. Yeah.
Wow.
And actually what I've noticed, I haven't seen too many people with Ehlers-Danlos talk about it, but I'm an incredibly difficult stick, like to get for an IV. I can't donate blood. I'd love to, but they can never find my veins. They like roll and it doesn't matter if I'm super hydrated or not. So I've been told that that's part of because of the collagen like deficiency and it, so that sucks. Whenever I have to have blood work, they're always like, oh, I can do it. No problem. I'm like, no, I'm a really difficult stick. Like, please use the butterfly needle. You might have to go in my hand instead of my arm, and they're always like, oh no, we got it. And then they try and they fail. And then they bring in the other one and they bring in the, last time I had to do it, they had 5 different people. I felt like a freaking pincushion.
And then
I bet you did.
Bruised because we also bruise more easily.
Yes.
So when they're sticking you 100
up
times.
and down both arms and the back of my hand. It looked like I'd been in like a crazy fight. Like, so many different colors. I didn't know your skin could turn so many colors.
I bet.
So surprise, some of the rainbow.
Even more routine stuff, much less an IV is very difficult. And I've had, I think 8 surgeries at this point.
Oh, wow.
Cubital tunnel, which is the nerve in the elbow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
On both sides released.
I think like I used to be a more difficult stick. I think since I don't know, it's funny because some things got worse as I got older. And I ended up actually getting stiffer, which is common with EDS patients because you've done so much to your muscles and tendons that you can develop some really bad arthritis as you get older. And since I've started developing that, I'm an easier stick than what I used to be when I was younger. So I'm like, well, can I count that as a positive?
Yes, absolutely. Heck yeah, strength space. Absolutely.
You can stick me with needles much easier, but I've also had some really good phlebotomists too. But yeah, I find that they're finding my veins easier, even though you can, see most of my veins.
Oh, yeah.
Common in EDS.
I'm clear like I'm
you're like,
oh wow, yeah.
That's always interesting when you're younger too. People are like, why can I see all your veins? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, my skin, I will say an upside to EDS. I have the softest skin and I never use moisturizer. Like it is velvet. And I just thought that was
now because I live in a very dry environment. And one of the problems I have is I never seem to get enough water. I can drink 90 ounces of water a day and I'm always thirsty. Always.
I moved to Arizona because I was originally up in New England, but those winters were just killing me. The cold, all of my muscles would contract. I could barely move. It was so painful.
Oh, that's awful.
It's funny because I think people don't understand that also temperature regulation is an issue in a lot of people with chronic illness too. And for me, if it's really hot, I'm just done. And if it's really cold, I do the same thing. The muscles all tense up and you do so much damage to yourself when you're like that and you can't warm up. like I've sat next to fires and fireplaces and can't get my body to stop. So it does.
Being really, really careful about it. And,
Yeah.
So tell us, how long did it take you to get diagnosed, and what doctors were you seeing? What processes were you going through? And
yeah, so I would say from 2010, I had the ankle sprains and then Aquarian tendonitis, and then I started having terrible pain in my back, which was dismissed by multiple people as just a muscle sprain, just a spasm, just a this, just a that. And I ended up having an emergency spine surgery. Because I started getting tingling and going numb on one side of my body. So I go to the ER. And I had an MRI and it showed 2 discs were pressing on my spinal cord and needed to come out.
Yeah.
So they had not only herniated, but they had actually sequestered. It's just when they go actually into the spinal canal and they were depressed, they were causing damage.
Wow.
So I had a 10-hour spinal surgery in 2016, which has led to more disability.
Yeah.
And then so at 28, they told me I had degenerative disc disease, severe osteoarthritis of the spine, bone spurs, all this stuff, which now they're thinking was accelerated by all of that hypermobility when I was younger, and all the moving and twisting and range of motion that should not have occurred.
Right. See, this is why I feel like not telling people about some of these chronic illnesses early on and teaching the public about them, because some people are like, look, my child is so flexible.
Yeah.
And they'll have their kids doing
all sorts of party
types
tricks.
of splits and all party tricks, and oh my gosh, and not realizing that actually for a person with EDS causes damage, not maybe right then, but way down the road. All the party tricks you were doing, all the stuff you were doing, you pay for later.
Yeah. So after the spine surgery, I was in a hard collar for 3 months, couldn't move my neck. It was terrifying, actually. I lost a lot. I had to stop work. I couldn't really take care of myself. It was really, really tough.
Yeah.
I think I probably some medical PTSD, which is a whole other deal. How I was treated in the hospital and just some of the things that happened. And because they go in through the front and then they have to move the esophagus and the trachea out of the way. So then you can't speak, you can't really swallow very well afterwards. And so I was alone in a hospital bed and they said, oh, just press this call button if you need more medication or you need something. I press it and the nurses at the station are like, oh, how can we help you? And I can't talk. I can't speak. I can barely whisper. And it's, so that's just one piece.
That's horrible.
But I'm actually working on it. I'm a therapist myself, and that's a whole other story. But I'm doing some EMDR for medical PTSD.
Oh, good.
So it's been really interesting so far. But so the whole thing with the spine happened. And then you go to all the different specialists. And I think part of the reason it took me so long to get diagnosed was that nobody was looking at the whole picture.
Yes.
I had the specialist, I had the GI specialist, I had the cardiologist, I had the orthopedist, I had, your primary care is the person that they tell you should be managing everything, but they have no idea what's going on.
Exactly.
And they're telling me I just need to lose weight and stop being so anxious all the time. That's what I was told. I was actually fired from 2 different PCP offices because I kept going saying something is wrong. I am in pain. There is something more systemic. And they're like, well, we did our XYZ tests and everything came back normal. So what do you want? And because I was so insistent, I got fired from places because they were like, well, we don't think this is working out. This is not a fit. You're asking for more treatment. There is no more treatment. You don't have, what do you want? You've done your physical therapy. You've done this. What are you expecting?
Wow.
So I've had multiple different places, and I still do. But part of how I actually got a diagnosis was I was finally referred to a different rheumatologist who looked at me, listened and everything. And then I think I was leaning weird or because my elbows are super hyperextend crazy. And she was looking at me and she's like, And then she did the bite and score test on me.
Yeah.
So that was 2019. So it was 9 years. It's
That's
about
a
8
long
hours.
Wow.
time. That's a long
Wow.
time to go with all these symptoms
Yeah.
and no one putting
And have
anything
no
together.
diagnosis.
No one putting it together. Everyone telling you it's in your head. You're just not trying hard enough. You're just not doing enough of the physical therapy.
That's the worst.
You're just not, you're the problem.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Yep.
think that's why Nicole and I talk a lot about learning to fire your doctors that
Yes.
aren't working for you. Like,
100%.
and fire is a harsh word. You just go see a different doctor, and it, with insurance, it's very difficult to do sometimes, and it puts the burden on us, especially if you don't have, if you have like an HMO or something, and it's always referrals.
Or Medicaid, if
Or
you're on public aid or
Medicaid.
something, it's very
Yeah.
difficult.
Right.
can
But,
be very hard
that's
to
why I will only get a
transfer.
PPO
Yeah.
as long as I'm privileged enough to afford it, because I need to if I want to go see a doctor, I go see a doctor. As long as they're in network, I'm fine. But I'm privileged enough to afford that PPO. And, I would say for anyone who suspects a chronic illness, if they can't afford to go the PPO option, to do it, because it gives you more freedom to explore your illness with doctors that will actually work with you. But not everyone has that privilege. And it's
I've had it and lost it in different parts of my life. I'm very, very fortunate, and I will put it out there that my partner is very successful with software engineering and technology.
Oh, nice.
So with that income, we have been able to pay for treatment and to pay for things and have a PPO. I mean, we pay $1,500 a month
Oh,
for just
wow.
coverage for the two of us.
Wow.
And then there's, the $2,000 deductible, and then there's the
Of
$9,000 out of
course.
pocket match,
Uh-huh.
and all of the co-pays and the co-insurance, 20% of everything that you have to pay. It's a lot of money.
Mhm.
Actually, I mean, honestly, all the money I make goes to supporting me medically.
Yeah, medical bills. Yeah.
Honestly. It's all medical bills. I do go for a massage, twice a month.
As you should.
That's my nice.
And actually, that's
Absolutely.
covered, but
It
it's
should
not.
be covered. Gosh darn it. It's the only thing that helps. All the
Right.
stuff that actually helps is not covered. My shower
No.
chair, not covered.
Not
My
covered.
walker, not covered.
Not covered.
My transport chair, not covered. Like,
Mm-mm.
my medical braces, I'm fighting now because they want me to get custom leg braces so my knees don't go backwards, because I'm
Oh,
having
yeah.
a lot of trouble walking with a lot of pain. And so they need these custom braces, but the insurance is like, no, you can get the off the shelf ones. But the shape of my
Of
leg is more
course.
of like an hourglass. Like, I've got a decent thigh, and then the knee is tiny. And then I've got a decent calf, and off the shelf braces are straight up and down.
They're not going to work. You need
They
something
don't work.
customized.
So it's this whole bananas, and paying the 20% of that. I mean, it's going to be at least $600
Oh, yeah.
out of pocket, and and this and there. So it's a lot to manage. It's very expensive. And so this one rheumatologist, she did the bite and score. I do a 7 out of 9 because of my problems with my hands. I can't do the thumb to the.
But according to the Biden scale, it's not, can you do it right now, but have you ever been able to do it? Because I can't either because of the arthritis anymore. But I used to sit there in class and I'd be like pushing my thumbs back, touching my
And how many times I dislocated my fingers just like pressing the button on the elevator,
Oh, wow.
because like the top part moves more than it should.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
jeez.
and I had no idea. So I'm just like, bang.
Oh,
Well, and
my
yeah, and that's the thing. People don't understand with Ehlers-Danlos, like the subluxations and the dislocations, sometimes they really don't hurt that much. It just kind of pops
Just
out and
gotta
pops back
put it
in.
back. Yeah, I do an assessment when I wake up in the morning. I'm like, all right, what has traveled during the night? What do I
Yes.
need to put back into place?
Or you sleep in that like a really weird position. Like I look like a pretzel when I sleep. I have like one arm twisted behind my back and others like
It
twisted
feels,
here.
it feels comfortable. You're like,
It's like what I was watching Stranger Things, and there's the new monster that pulls people out and like breaks all their bones and twists them. And I'm like, that kind of looks like me when I'm laying in bed at night.
yeah. So the bite and
I'm like,
score,
I think every person with Ehlers-Danlos relates to this demon guy doing this to people. Maybe that's what our problem is.
yeah, it's a
I
demon.
swear, I watch it and I was like, I feel all of that. And why are they complaining about it being painful? I don't understand. That's how I normally go.
Yeah, I have to be really, you understand, I have to be really careful kind of how I move, how am I
Oh,
sitting,
sure.
how I'm supported. Because if I just do what feels natural, I'm all over the place.
Yes.
You know?
And the proprioception issue where you're just, I'm still walking into everything.
Mhm.
I still like, I'm like, guys, I
walk into
promise I really did walk into a door. No one's abusing me. I really did just walk into the door.
My arms are always, I've always got bruises and stuff from hitting into things, or I have an Apple Watch. The face is all scratched up because it constantly hits into walls or things, or I don't realize I'm as close as I am to something, or, you know, I've tripped going up and downstairs multiple times.
Or when you're decorating your house, you're like, I can't put that glassware there because I know I'm going to bump into this. We're going to move it over here. Or you get like the museum stuff, and it's all because, not because you're worried about like toddlers or children, you're worried about yourself. Yeah, it's
Nikki, was that rheumatologist? Was she the one who diagnosed you?
So she diagnosed me with the lovely misnomer of benign joint hypermobility syndrome.
Ah, okay.
So that was in 2019. I started on Lyrica because I had been on gabapentin and it just didn't work for me.
It didn't work for me either, except putting on like 40 pounds.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So the combo of the Lyrica and Cymbalta, I gained like 50 pounds. And I have a very strict diet and I can't lose weight. I eat about under 1,000 calories a day.
It's so frustrating.
That's the exercise I can do is some swim. I have some exercises and things I can do in the water that are decent. It's harder for me to get any sort of other exercise when I've tried, when I tried to do the bike, I dislocated my hip. Different stretches and things have been really, really difficult, but I can't lose.
And some doctors tell you not to do certain things. Like I'm not allowed to do anything but like Tai Chi and maybe water aerobics or swimming. And that's basically it. I live in a town in California. Where am I gonna, like we have a community pool. No one's gonna let me sit there in the community pool and do water aerobics with them. So, and there's like kids everywhere. So it makes it like when you have those exercise restrictions, it can be very frustrating when you're like, because also that weight puts more pressure on your joints.
Yeah.
So you're stuck in this vicious cycles of, I can't do the things I want to do to help me lose the weight. The weight gain is from the medicine and it's going to take all those things to do. And I think a lot of people with chronic illness struggle with that a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of trade-offs. I do think my medication, I did notice a great decrease in nerve pain and nerve shocks. I still have some, but not like I was before.
Oh, good.
I think it helps certain things. I'm able to.
I want to go back to you saying nerve shocks. So I don't think people realize that can actually also be a comorbidity of the illness, because I get them in my tongue, which is really weird feeling. But we do get these nerve shocks almost like why we also get misdiagnosed as fibromyalgia. Yeah. Or sometimes we have fibromyalgia and EDS, but I think people don't know that can also be a symptom.
Yeah. So I have the nerve pain and then just sensitivity. Like, unfortunately, part of the exam for fibro is they press on all those tender points. Yes, and for me, it's really tough because anyone pressing on any part of my skin, I'm like, that hurts. They're like, oh, does this hurt? Does that hurt? Does that hurt? And I'm like, yes, that all is very uncomfortable. I don't know what you want me to say. Like it's tough. I'm all over uncomfortable. Yeah. Like my body sucks.
Which makes that diagnosis sometimes even more difficult. I think, and that's not just for EDS, that's for any chronic illness. It's hard because so many illnesses have a lot of the same symptoms, and narrowing it down. Like Nicole, your doctor was like, well, it could be lupus. It couldn't.
I saw multiple doctors before. Yeah. And lupus is considered the great imitator. Yes. So it's very, 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 I think it's 6 years before anyone usually gets a correct diagnosis, an average of 4 to 6.
Yeah. But the medicines for each of the diagnoses that they were concerned you might have like you couldn't, like one would have killed you.
One could have, she said like all my organs could have shut down. So we said no. And so it was a lot of waiting. Yeah, it was a lot of waiting. It's very frustrating.
Trial and error. And
it is.
If anything from this whole experience, I have recognized and reminded myself that medical professionals are at the end of the day, people.
Yes.
They are fallible. They can make mistakes. They can make misdiagnoses. They can misunderstand And the way that our healthcare system is pressured, where you get maybe 15, 20 minutes if you're
lucky.
If you're
Yeah.
lucky.
If you're lucky.
And that they have not had the opportunity to do any review before they walk in that room, and talk to you. And it's not enough at all.
No,
so,
it's not.
The rheumatologist diagnosed me. I started on medications. There was some improvement, but not much. I've had multiple other surgeries and things since then. And then, with some of the economic changes, we ended up being able to make a nice profit on our house up in New Hampshire and move to Arizona and to get away from the winters. We have a plan for the summers. It's a little complicated, but overall it is better. But
I lived in Arizona, so I know exactly what you're talking about. There is a huge difference in that climate. Without the humidity, without the constant changes in weather. Like I always knew in Arizona exactly when like a monsoon was showing up or a haboob, which is a dust storm, was going to come in, because I was like a 90-year-old arthritic. I could feel it in my bones. I could feel it coming, but it was so much more rare than when I like lived in Chicago and the weather changes 5 times a day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not perfect by any means, but it's been better.
Good.
And then, but I'm continuing to have issues like the deterioration in my legs, trouble walking, not as stable. A lot of issues with where I had the fusion in my neck and my spine, issues above and below. I have spent probably about 10 grand on chiropractors that really didn't do anything. Continued to try to, promise results. And then we're increasingly frustrated that I was not getting any better. And then, so there is a EDS specialist. He's a neurologist in Phoenix. There is some controversy because he stopped taking insurance and he is private pay only. I tried every other thing I could possibly think of and then was like, you know what? I'll shell out the money and see this guy. And so it was $2 grand for an initial. But he did spend 2 hours with me and my partner.
Oh, good.
For my entire history. It was the first time, this just happened a couple months ago. This is the first time that a provider has actually sat down and reviewed my entire record, all of my results, blood testing, imaging, all of that stuff. And really looked at, since I was a kid to now, what has happened, how things have progressed. Did the bite and score again. I had the same score, but also looked at, things like having the high, narrow palate.
Yes.
In your mouth. My palate was so narrow. I got a Jolly Rancher stuck up there.
Oh, wow.
I've done that.
So I got the palate expander when I was a kid. My mom actually went into debt. I have a single mom, shout out to mom. She went into debt to get the palate expander and for me to get braces.
Wow.
Because it was so narrow and the crowding was so terrible. There was no room for the teeth. Like I had my wisdom teeth taken out. They were all impacted. There was no room in the mouth.
Sure.
Wow. So stuff like that you wouldn't even think of as EDS stuff.
Or like I choke on my own saliva all the time.
Oh yeah.
That's another common thing with people with EDS. We are like, we don't swallow properly. So yeah, all of a sudden I'll start coughing. People are like, are you okay? Like I cough, like I choked on water. They're like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I just choked on my own saliva. And they look at me like I'm crazy, but I know other EDS patients have this problem.
Happens really often. And it's one of those things where like, you just figure everybody else deals with it.
Yeah.
And then you try to explain it to someone and they're like, what?
Yes.
Or people are like, oh, are you in pain today? Just the normal amount. Well, the normal amount of pain is 0. What?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that one. I love that one.
I've never been below a 3. Like,
I look back and I'm like, I think a lot of times I just ignored pain, but I've never not had some sort of pain going on or something wrong with my body. It's just that I learned to gaslight myself, and that was it.
Yeah,
but when doctors ask you pain scales, that's I think I vent on this almost every episode. But I hate pain scales.
Yeah. Oh, it's completely arbitrary and ridiculous. And I hate it. It's not evidence-based in any way, shape, or form.
So when they ask me, I won't give them a number.
I hate
They're
it.
like, what's your number? And I'm like, I don't have a number. I'm going to tell you how my pain impacts my daily life.
Yes. That's what's important. That's
Yeah.
what's important is how is it impacting? What is it limiting? What makes it worse? What makes it better? Like those are important questions. The
Yes.
stupid like 1 to 10, because it's not like if I tell you I'm an 8, you're going to do anything about it.
Right.
So like, why are we
Also,
even
my
having this
8 is
conversation?
different. My 8, you would die at my 8.
Yep.
Like if I'm saying it's an 8, it's really bad. And if you felt this, you would be like in a hospital. Because we've become so desensitized to our own pains and aches and illnesses.
If I flipped out screaming, crying on the floor every time I was in high pain, I would not function. It wouldn't be possible. But I think that I think part of what contributed to my diagnosis was that people did not believe. I'd say, yeah, I'm about a 7 or an 8 right now. And I'd be just sitting there talking and they wouldn't believe me. And I'm like, you don't understand the internal experience. And
Right.
Like, if you want me to throw myself on the floor, like,
yeah, I can. It's
fine.
like, but you experience it daily.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. You know,
it's your normal.
What you have to go through. And so it's really challenging, but you know, I did meet with this specialist a couple months ago. You know, I check all the boxes essentially. You know, he made some recommendations, and it's not like there's some magic pill or a cure or anything. But that is when I guess I officially got the hypermobile EDS diagnosis. You know, so they were saying
it's not an easy thing to diagnose because there's no genetic test for it. There's no
going off the criteria
a test for it. It's an elimination disease.
Yes. Yeah, trying to
by the way, like even
possible.
lupus has a test for it, but you don't always test positive for it.
Right.
Like it's only
you can't go by just blood work. They have something that can pop up with autoimmune antibodies, but you have to have symptoms too. It's both.
Yeah, so it's you know, some people it's when they have certain types of EDS, and I wouldn't wish it on them anyway because those tend to be more severe forms. They can test with genetic testing.
They found markers for the other types.
But I wouldn't wish those types on anybody because a lot of them are very severe and can be deadly. So
yeah, some of
ruling those out is really nice.
Vascular.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a concern that I have. You know, my heart has never been checked out. And
need to get that checked.
I know. Well,
I'm going to tell you to make an appointment with a cardiologist.
So I did finally. Well, I had to get the referral from PCP and you know, and it's a whole thing. Because I do have high blood pressure, but they've always chalked it up to my pain.
Right.
But then now, you know, it's a whole thing. So this isn't just in Phoenix. I know this is in other places too. There is such a shortage of techs and available spots.
Yes.
It's a 6-month wait for an echo.
Oh, I have no doubt.
Yeah.
So
I got very lucky with my doctors. My cardiologist has the echo machine in their office, so anyone there can perform. They seem to remain staffed really well. So I get very lucky that I have all my echoes scheduled, like, and it's great. Which is also why I love my cardiologist very much. And he's the one doctor who spends, I think, the most time with me. But
yeah, it's important, but it's hard. You don't know what you don't know too.
Exactly.
And so all this like, well, you have benign joint hypermobility. How do you know it's EDS if there isn't a gene for it? And I'm like, okay, but then point me, like I went to so many people before I went to this guy because of the pay situation. You know, but nobody else would take that time. Nobody else would sit down and look at all of the pieces together.
I think that's the one benefit of social media now is that you can join groups, watch other people go through it and learn from them. But also in the groups, I'm part of an EDS group that's local. And a lot of times when we feel something or need something, we'll be like, can you guys recommend someone who actually understands EDS? And I can go to them. And we get referred. That's how I found my current rheumatologist, because she was recommended by all these other people in the group, and she was great. She's great. You know,
there's such a range of people's understanding in the medical profession. I mean, I met, so I had my rheumatologist the other day, and she had her like resident or, you know, junior person with them. And I was telling him about what it is to be hypermobile and the Ehlers-Danlos, and And he was like, well, the only thing I know is like the thumb to wrist thing. And I'm like, oh, that's the one I can't do. But look at the elbows. Look at, like there's other ways.
But
and
Nicole, you've said how much training they get, right? They get like a 2-hour training on
on different diseases. It depends. I mean, you go through a course on, one of your classes gives you an overview on immune diseases, so you're lucky if you get a week, sometimes, because you're going over the entire system. So you're not getting very much. That's why doctors specialize and go through fellowships, because that's where you learn when you come out of medical school and you specialize.
Yeah. So I think one of the things we need to realize as patients is that's why it's important to find a doctor that is listening to you and is curious. The curiosity is usually a doctor who's going to help you the most, because now you've made them curious and they want to learn and they want to find out. But they don't get a huge amount of training on these chronic illnesses. They just don't.
Right. And they don't like to say,
a small percentage of the population.
Mm-hmm. A lot of doctors don't like to say, I don't know. You're so right.
They don't want to say they don't know. So they rather
it's
say
a pride thing sometimes.
Or it's you or I got eventually, when I would bring up Ehlers-Danlos, I got a couple of people who were like, I don't treat that.
Yes.
And it's like, well, then tell me who does.
Was like, but she was really nice about it. She's like, it's not my specialty. I don't know that much about it. I think that's what you have. Here's other doctors that can help with this diagnosis. And I want to put a crown on her head and say, she may not have been able to treat me, but she knew what to do to get me treatment that she thought I needed.
Right.
And I appreciate that more than all the doctors who were gaslighting me about my symptoms.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's really hard. It's the diagnosis process is incredibly frustrating. It's why I encourage people to take a lot of notes when they go, evaluate their doctors, know when it's time to switch a doctor up. It's just hard, because even once you get the diagnosis, then treatment becomes a whole other ball of wax. Yep. It's like you feel that almost relief when you get the diagnosis, but then you're like, oh my gosh, no one knows what to do with this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and there's also some considerations, and there might be some cases where it would be in someone's best interest to not have ADS on their record. I mean, I'm impossible to get life insurance.
Yeah, me too. I can't get it.
Like there's a bunch of things. I mean, thank goodness. I mean, I hate to get political, but the Affordable Care Act is the only reason I'm still alive. Yes. Point blank.
Very true.
Blank. But I mean, who knows where our country's going. Luckily, my partner is a citizen of the UK and the EU and the US. He's got a variety of passports. So that's sort of our out, unfortunately. That's our backup plan, because at some point, if we don't have access, or, if they can reinstitute not just pre-existing conditions, but like caps on coverage.
Oh God, can you imagine? We would be screwed.
My surgeries would have exceeded, my spine surgery, between the physical therapy that I was in the hospital in a room for a week because of complications. I mean, it was almost $1 million when you added up.
Oh yeah.
One surgery.
Yes. It gets very pricey.
So I know that's a larger conversation, but
but it is a consideration. There are many people who don't get treatment because they cannot afford it.
It's true.
Get worse and worse. And for some people, if they had treated it then, it would have been fine. But the insurance company won't start paying for it till they get to that extreme point where it's like, you guys could have prevented that $1 million hospital bill if you had paid $2,000 3 years ago. But the insurance company just isn't thinking.
Oh, I've said that all the time. I'm like, but you know what? The cure is in prevention, they always say, with a lot of different things. But there's so many preventative things that are not paid for, and that is the problem. People have to get deathly ill. Then it's like, well, why didn't you come to the doctor before? Really?
Are you kidding me? Yeah, it's getting the care is it's extremely frustrating, and there are things out there that could help people, but they're considered experimental.
I've done a bunch of that. Paying out of pocket prolotherapy has been, hit or miss. I've just been trying to try anything possible.
Yeah, my sleep doctor actually recommended a drug to help me possibly lose some weight, because we were talking about how my joints are hurting and all this stuff. I don't get lectured about my weight a lot by my doctors, because when I first started this, I was 40 pounds lighter, and they have seen the progression in my charts. So I'm the one who ends up bringing up my weight because of the joint pain.
Mhm.
And a lot of them, like, this is the first doctor that said, well, we could look at this. You could talk to someone about using this drug. He doesn't prescribe it because he's a sleep doctor. That's like out of his wheelhouse. But he said they really only give it to people. Insurance will only pay for it if you have type 2 diabetes.
Yep. When you told me what it was, I was like, they're not going to cover that.
They're not going to cover it. So I have to look at, if one of my doctors is willing to prescribe it, do I just pay for it out of pocket?
And check GoodRx too, because a lot of the times if you don't put it under your insurance, you'll get that price, and it literally is like 75% less.
Yes. You have to explore all of those.
Yeah, don't run it through insurance.
Thank you, Mark Cuban.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to hug him every time I see him, because I'm like, you are saving people's lives.
Absolutely.
GoodRx, all of those places are great resources. Actually, Nicole, we should put some of those resources on our website.
I agree.
I'll try to work on that this weekend.
Okay.
So we are just about out of time.
Yes.
I could talk about this stuff forever.
Oh gosh, yes.
I want to thank Nikki for coming on our show and talking about this.
Thank you so much, Nikki.
Welcome to come back anytime.
Yes, please do.
We want to know more about your journey. We want to know how things are progressing with you, be supportive of you. Nikki, do you want me to encourage people to follow you on TikTok? Follow her on TikTok?
It's basically a lot of my pug and my bulldog, and then me complaining about being in pain.
Yes, but I love pugs and Nicole loves bulldogs. We're great.
Yeah. So I'm Nikki, Nikkif, as in Frank, 610.
Perfect.
Awesome. I'll be following you too, Nikki.
It's very original. It's my name and then my birthday.
There you go.
Awesome.
But follow her on TikTok. She, I know you say you complain, but I think what the stuff you're going through are things we are all going through, and it fosters that community. And, I just really want to thank you for being on the show. Come back anytime.
Yes.
We appreciate you, and we appreciate everybody who's listening and following us. Again, we are on TikTok too with the Chronic Spoonful. We are also on Facebook, Instagram. Oh, I don't know.
Everywhere.
And on our website. So thank you, everybody, and have a great week.
Have a great week, you guys.